Morning. I'm going to do a little theorizing this morning because times are just so interesting. I'm watching, unfortunately not that well because of all the drama in the U.S., what's going on in Great Britain with the UKiP. And I go ahead and look at what's going on in the U.S. and other parts of the world. And it's almost like what we have is a segment of our leaders and elites that are trying to form us into one giant homogenous culture and people, the human race. Now, I'm not trying to be a New World Order conspiracy nut, but there is much historical documentation to support the logic behind the efforts of these leaders. One of the main ones being that ever since ancient Greece, it has been very rare. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it has been very rare for democracies to go to war with each other. Thus, the neocon philosophy of nation building. Go into Iraq, turn it into a democracy. Go into Afghanistan, turn it into a democracy. The only problem is they are underestimating the power of religion. And that truly supports the concept that governments have become godless, that they see themselves as, they see themselves as the most important thing in the people's lives, when I'm sure the people would have other things to say that are much more important to them other than government. And fear has been a great motivator in democracy. Ever since ancient Greece, the fear of the Spartans, the fear of various other city-states, the fear of Persia. And in the modern era, it was the fear of the USSR, the fear of terrorism. Now, why do they play off fear? Now, the Republicans, it was obvious. It was the fact that they saw communism as an ideological polar opposite of capitalism. They knew that the two would never be compatible. So if you couldn't embrace it and bring it and taint the communism and bring it into the fold of capitalism like they did with China, they bankrupted it like they did with the USSR. But anyone that understands economics could have told you that the USSR was a house of cards just waiting to fall in upon itself. Whereas the US was spending less than 10% of its GDP on military defense, the USSR was spending like 40% of its GDP on military. So even though on paper the USSR was keeping up with the United States, it was bankrupting itself in the process. But I digress. The liberals, on the other hand, they tried the promise of their utopia, the promise of the liberal dream. But that liberal dream fell apart, and it fell apart very quickly. It fell apart with the riots in the 60s. The alienation with society in the 70s, the blind materialism of the 80s, and then the terrorism and economic crisis of the 90s. What economic crisis? Did you not forget how quickly gas spiked thanks to the Gulf War? And of course, in 2000s, more terrorism, more economic problems. Now, the liberal will always tell you that this is because not enough money was thrown at the problem to solve it. The conservative will tell you it's because you're wasting money, driving us into debt, and not letting people take care of their own problems. But there is that overwhelming drive towards a larger, more homogeneous society, as I started off with. Massive amounts of immigration, refugees inside the U.S. The theory being that they will assimilate and become Americans. Of course, they will change America too. But that's what every wave of immigrants has done to this country. You join the melting pot and you add something to that melting pot. And in doing so, you become part of the melting pot. There's only one problem. Several groups don't want to become part of the melting pot. They have this equal but separate ideology. They want to keep their old laws. They want to keep their way of life. They want to be exempt from traditional American law and instead practice their own law. Yes, I'm talking about Sharia law. These leaders seem to be entertaining this idea in the hopes that it will fall apart in a generation or two. Meanwhile, the West, and I'm not talking just about the United States, this problem exists in France, this problem exists in the United Kingdom, this problem exists in Sweden, it exists to a lesser degree in Canada, but it's there too. Meanwhile, the West, due to our over-civilization, becomes soft. This can be seen by the ever-increasing amount of PTSD cases that we are seeing in our militaries. It is because a people that are not accustomed to violence, when they are overexposed to it, they break down. That is natural. It's to be expected. If you are used to one way of life, and all of a sudden you are thrust into another, more adversarial way of life, you have a large chance to have a negative reaction. You don't hear about PTSD or problems and nightmares in these various tribal factions and terrorist factions that we've been fighting against in the Middle East. That's because these people have always had a very violent culture. They are still living in a time of the Middle Ages, literally. So what do our leaders really think they can do? Do they really think that they can convince these people to join us in the 21st century just because of a little bit of interaction with the elites from that society? Do they really think that they will be able to maintain their positions of power? In the U.S., the Republicans just won a massive election. Gained control of the Senate. Gained more seats in the House. gained governors in states that have not had a Republican governor in years and years. What is this a symbol of? It's a symbol of the rejection of this world first mentality. People want to take care of themselves. They want to take care of their neighbors. They want to take care of their family. They want to take care of their country before they take care of others. The UK is having the same situation with the UKiP. It's a rejection of the EU overlords that are usurping a lot of the authority from the people in each individual country. And these groups are growing all over the European Union. The UN just shows how completely, utterly ridiculous they are with their concerns over global warming, climate change, or whatever the hell it's being called this month. In their desire to control the man-made caused climate change. Yes, that's sarcasm. They are holding back various third world countries, preventing them from modernizing, preventing them from joining the 21st century, to prevent them from being just like all of us evil polluters. You are the saints of the planet. Be happy that you are living in unison with nature. These people don't care about that. They want stuff. People want stuff. Yes, I realize that we do not have enough raw materials on this planet to give everyone all of the stuff that they would want, because everyone wants a Western lifestyle and they can't have it. Just like in the US, they talk about equality, but there can be no equality. There can be equality under the law. There can be equality of opportunity, provided you work hard enough for it. It's not given to you, unless you're lucky enough to have the proper parents that will guide you and show you how to be a success. Our parents are more important to us than anything you can imagine. They are the birthright that breeds success. I'm sorry. I have to finish this up. I wanted to hit a few more points, but I have to go to work. So I'm going to say to all of you that lean right and actually take the time to watch any of these videos, remember, we work not to support the liberal, but so we do not become like the liberals. Much love.